Caddo's Wall, West African folktale as told by Harold Corlander and George Herzog. In the town of Tindela in the kingdom of Senu, north of the Gulf of Guinea, there was a rich man by the name of Caddo. His fields spread out on every side of the town. At plowing time, hundreds of men and boys hoed up his fields, and then hundreds of women and girls planted his corn seed in the ground for him. His grain bulged in his granary, because each season he harvested far more than he could use. The name of Caddo was known far and wide throughout the kingdom of Seno. Travelers who passed through the town carried tales of his wealth far beyond Senu's borders. One day, Caddo called all of his people in the town of Tindela together for a big meeting in front of his house. They all came, for Caddo was an important man, and they knew he was going to make an important announcement. "There's something that bothers me," Caddo said. "I've been thinking about it for a long time. I've lain awake worrying. I have so much corn in my granary that I don't know what to do with it." The people listened attentively and thought about Caddo's words. Then a man said, "Some of the people of the town have no corn at all. They are very poor and have nothing. Why don't you give some of your corn to them?" Caddo shook his head and said, "No, that isn't a very good idea. It doesn't satisfy me." Another man said to Caddo, "Well, then, you could lend corn to the people who have had a bad harvest and have no seed for the spring planting. That would be very good for the town and would keep poverty away." "No," Caddo said, "that's no solution either." "Well then, why not sell some of your corn and buy cattle instead?" Still another man said. Caddo shook his head. "No, it's not very good advice. It's hard for people to advise a rich man with problems like mine." Many people made suggestions, but nobody's advice suited Caddo. He thought for a while, and at last he said, "Send me as many young girls as you can find. I will have them grind the corn for me." The people went away. They were angry with Caddo, but the next day they sent 100 girls to work for him as he had asked. On 100 grindstones, they began to grind Caddo's corn into flour. All day long they put corn into the grindstones and took flour out. All day long the people of the town heard the sound of the grinding at Caddo's house. A pile of corn flour began to grow. For 7 days and 7 nights, the girls ground corn without a pause. When the last grain of corn was ground into flour, Caddo called the girls together and said, "Now bring water from the spring. We shall mix it with the corn flour to make mortar out of it." So the girls brought water in water pots and mixed it with the flour to make a thick mortar. Then Caddo ordered them to make bricks out of the mortar. "When the bricks are dry, then I shall make a wall of them around my house," he said. Word went out that Caddo was preparing to build a wall of flour around his house, and the people of the town came to his door and protested. "You can't do a thing like this. It is against humanity," they said. "It's not right. People have no right to build walls with food," a man said. What is right and what is wrong?" Caddo said. "My right is different from yours, because I am so very rich. So leave me alone. Corn is to eat so that you may keep alive," another said. "It's not meant to taunt those who are less fortunate." front to shut them out with a wall of flour, another man said. Stop your complaints, Cato said. The corn is mine. It is my surplus. I can't eat it all. It comes from my own fields. I am rich. What good is it to be rich if you can't do what you want with your own property? The people of the town went away, shaking their heads in anger over Cato's madness. The 100 girls continued to make bricks of flour, which they dried in the sun. And when the bricks were dry, Cato had them begin building the wall around his house. They used wet dough for mortar to hold the bricks together, and slowly the wall grew. They stuck cowrie shells into the wall to make beautiful designs, and when at last the wall was done, and the last corn flour used up, Cato was very proud. He walked back and forth and looked at his wall. He walked around it. He went in and out of the gate. He was very happy. And now, when people came to see him, they had to stand by the gate until he asked them to enter. When the workers who plowed and planted for Cato wanted to talk to him, Cato sat on the wall by the gate and listened to them and gave them orders. And whenever the people of the town wanted his opinion on an important matter, he sat on his wall and gave it to them, while they stood and listened. Things went on like this for a long time. Cato enjoyed his reputation as the richest man for miles around. The story of Cato's wall went to the farthest parts of the kingdom. And then, one year, there was a bad harvest for Cato. There wasn't enough rain to grow the corn, and the earth dried up hard and dusty like the road. There wasn't a single ear of corn in all of Cato's fields, or the fields of his relatives. The next year, it was the same. Cato had no seed corn left. So he sold his cattle and horses to buy corn for food and seed for a new planting. He sowed corn again, but the next harvest time it was the same, and there wasn't a single ear of corn on all his fields. Year after year, Cato's crops failed. Some of his relatives died of hunger, and others went away to other parts of the kingdom of Seno, for they had no more seed corn to plant, and they couldn't count on Cato's help. Cato's workers ran away because he was unable to feed them. Gradually, Cato's part of the town became deserted. All that he had left were a young daughter and a mangy donkey. When his cattle and his money were all gone, Cato became very hungry. He scraped away a little bit of the flour wall and ate it. The next day, he scraped away more of the flour wall and ate it. The wall got lower and lower. Little by little, it disappeared. A day came when the wall was gone, when nothing was left of the elegant structure Cato had built around his house, and on which he had used to sit to listen to the people of the town when they came to ask him to lend them a little seed corn. Then Cato realized that if he was to live any longer, he must get help from somewhere. He wondered who would help him. Not the people of Tindella, for he had insulted and mistreated them, and they would have nothing to do with him. There was only one man he could go to, Sagole, king of the Ghana people, who had the reputation of being very rich and generous. So Cato and his daughter got on the mangy, underfed donkey and rode 7 days until they arrived in the land of the Ghana. Sogole sat before his royal house when Cato arrived. He had a soft skin put on the ground next to him for Cato to sit upon, and had millet beer brought for the two of them to drink. "Well, stranger in the land of the Ghana, take a long drink, for you have a long trip behind you if you come from Tindela," Sogole said. "Thank you, but I can't drink much," Cato said. "Why is that?" Sogole said. "When people are thirsty, they drink." "That is true," Cato replied. "But I have been hungry too long, and my stomach is shrunk." "Well, drink in peace then, because now that you are my guest, you won't be hungry. You shall have whatever you need from me." Cato nodded his head solemnly and drank a little of the millet beer. "And now tell me," Sogole said, "you say you come from the town of Tindela in the kingdom of Seno. I've heard many tales of that town. The famine came there and drove out many people because they had no corn left." "Yes," Cato said. "Hard times drove them out and the corn was all gone. But tell me, there was a rich and powerful man in Tindela named Cato, wasn't there? Whatever happened to him? Is he still alive?" "Yes, he is still alive," Cato said. "A fabulous man, this Cato," Sogole said. "They say he built a wall of flour around his house out of his surplus crops, and when he talked to his people, he sat on the wall by his gate. Is this true?" "Yes, it is true," Cato said sadly. "Does he still have as many cattle as he used to?" Sogole asked. "No, they are all gone." "It is an unhappy thing for a man who owns so much to come to so little," Sogole said. "But doesn't he have many servants and workers still?" "His workers and servants are all gone," Cato said. "Of all his great household, he has only one daughter left. The rest went away because there was no money and no food." Sogole looked melancholy. "Ah, what is a rich man when his cattle are gone and his servants have left him? But tell me, what happened to the wall of flour that he built around his house?" "He ate the wall," Cato said. "Each day he scraped a little of the flour from the wall until it was all gone." "A strange story," Sogole said. "But such is life." And he thought quietly for a while about the way life goes for people sometimes. And then he asked, "And were you, by any chance, one of Cato's family?" "Indeed, I was one of Cato's family. Once I was rich. Once I had more cattle than I could count. Once I had many cornfields. Once I had hundreds of workers cultivating my crops. Once I had a bursting granary. Once I was Cato, the great personage of Tindela." "What? You yourself are Cato?" "Yes, once I was proud and lordly. And now I sit in rags, begging for help." "What can I do for you?" Sogole asked. "I have nothing left now. Give me some seed corn so that I can go back and plant my fields again." "Take what you need," Sogole said. He ordered his servants to bring bags of corn and to load them on Cato's donkey. Cato thanked him humbly, and he and his daughter started their return trip to Tindela. They traveled for 7 days. On the way, Cato became very hungry. He hadn't seen so much corn for a long time as he was bringing back from the kingdom of the Ghana. He took a few grains and put them in his mouth and chewed them. Once more, he put a few grains in his mouth. Then he put a whole handful in his mouth and swallowed. He couldn't stop. He ate and ate. He forgot that this was the corn with which he had to plant his fields. When he arrived in Tindella, he went to his bed to sleep. And when he arose the next morning, he ate again. He ate so much of the corn that he became sick. He went to his bed again and cried out in pain because his stomach had forgotten what to do with food. And before long, Cato died. Cato's grandchildren and great-grandchildren in the kingdom of Sano are poor to this day. And to the rich men of the country, the common people sometimes say.
Okay, now that you've listened to it, if you want to go back and listen to it again, by all means do so. But now I'd like you to see if you can come up with what was the last line of the story. Obviously, it's going to be some sort of saying to sum up what the point of the story was. As I said, the most creative or the closest will get a chocolate bar, or if I think your comments is worthy, if your contribution is worthy, I'll give you a chocolate bar anyway. Also, I'll be posting some comments, questions, and I'd love you to contribute to them. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for listening. I'll be online for the next 20 minutes or so to interact with you in the comments section. But if you need to contact me at school, just send me an email at peter.smith@youthplus.edu.au. Okay, catch you next week for another English lesson. Thank you. Bye.